To be properly motivated to do anything, one has to have a significant enough reason why to overcome all the reasons why not. You have to be clear in your why before you can accomplish your what. In today's episode from the relatively obscure book of Nehemiah, we see the people confronted with two obstacles in the path of their goal to rebuild the walls of the city of Jerusalem. These obstacles could have caused the people to stop building, but in the end, they redoubled their efforts. And their reason why was a big factor. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, January 17th, 2022. Many of you know that a few years ago I was overweight and then was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Not a severe case, fortunately, but just over the line. But when my doctor diagnosed me, I asked a simple question. What do I have to do to avoid going blind, losing my feet, or dying early? As important as these things were to me, and are, they were secondary to my real motivation. I wanted to be alive and healthy for as long as possible in order to enjoy grandchildren if and when they come along. My doctor's response was predictable. Control my diet and start exercising. And like that, I changed my diet and I began exercising. You see, I had a significant enough why to overcome all the competing reasons not to change. And many of you noticed a change in how I looked pretty quickly. The children of Israel, under Nehemiah's leadership, started to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Last week, we saw how Sanballat and Tobiah, regional governors of Jerusalem and surrounding areas, taunted Nehemiah and the Jews, and how the taunts, far from discouraging the people, actually became a source of motivation. Now the story takes a more intense turn. Sanballat and Tobiah quit their taunting and began threatening them with attack. In response, Nehemiah does two sensible things. He prays to God for help, and he posts guards. Well, so far so good. But then a second problem arises. Work slows down, and because they had to pull both guard duty and work detail, the laborers, called the burden bearers, became discouraged, overworked. Now Nehemiah faces a double threat: the potential from attack from the outside and the possibility of loss of motivation from within. In response, Nehemiah comes up with a different solution, one that addresses both problems at once. Here's how the solution begins. So in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, in open places, I stationed the people according to their families, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. After I looked these things over, I stood up and said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, "Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your kin, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes." This echoes a more modern observation about how soldiers behave in war. Once it comes right down to it, soldiers often have a hard time fighting and dying on behalf of sovereign and nation. But they readily fight to protect one another. And if one's family is at risk, they'll fight to protect their homes and their families. Nehemiah understood this centuries ago, long before it became common knowledge in our day. So here's how he organizes the people. He divides his forces in two, half pulling guard duty and half working the wall. But even those who are working on the wall are armed and ready to fight at all times. Here's how Nehemiah describes it at this point. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction, and half held the spears, shields, bows, and body armor. And the leaders posted themselves behind the whole house of Judah, who were building the wall. The burden bearers carried their loads in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand, and with the other held a weapon. and each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me. Thus organized and properly motivated, the work goes on. When we return tomorrow, Nehemiah confronts another crisis, this one having nothing to do with walls or invasions, but old-fashioned greed. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.